We all know that flat, accurate monitors are key for mixing and mastering, so that way your tracks translate better across headphones, car speakers, smartphones, and other devices. But your room is also a critical part of making accurate mix decisions. If your room isn't properly treated and tuned, you can still experience bass buildup, phase smearing, harsh reflections, and more issues that can lead to you making bad mix decisions that leave your tracks sounding lifeless, dull, overly bright, or even bass heavy once you transfer them to other devices. And that's where this comes in, folks. This is IK Multimedia's Arc Studio Advanced Room Correction. And this also comes with the Arc X software. So of course you can just use the Arc X software, but with Arc Studio, we have dedicated hardware so we can make a profile in Arc X, put that on the Arc Studio, and then we're done. We don't have to worry about putting that software on the output of our master track. We can just plug this in, we're ready to go. We can easily bypass the correction anytime we want if we just want to hear those monitors. And besides being able to correct your room, make things much flatter so you're able to get more accurate mix decisions, you can also hear your sound, hear your tracks through other professional studio monitors. There's a bunch of different models of different studio monitors, and there's also models for consumer devices, things like TVs, cell phones, that kind of stuff. So that way you can check your mix and hear what people are actually going to be hearing whenever you transfer it to those devices, whenever you upload it to YouTube or Spotify or wherever your music ends up. You'll be able to test all of that in a perfectly tuned room, and you're going to be making much more accurate mix decisions with Arc X and Arc Studio. All right, so let's unbox this here, set it up, and see how it works. I'll let you guys take a look at the box. Read all this if you want. Inside, you have the basic instructions on top. It's all pretty simple. You'll get a card with a serial number on it, which is on the other side. Here's the unit. Power supply, which is about 60 inches long. And in this box, you have the measurement microphone, mic clip, and a USB cable that's about 59 inches long. The unit itself is very well made with all metal housing and rubber feet on the bottom. The front features a power light, signal clip light, and a button where you can turn the correction on or off. On the rear, you have the power port, USB port, and XLR inputs and outputs for your audio interface and monitors. Now, if your audio interface only has TRS outputs like mine does, you'd want to get some TRS to XLR male cables. And if your studio monitors only have TRS inputs, then you'd also want to get some TRS to XLR female cables. As far as the tech specs go, you can see it's all high quality with an audio conversion and internal processing sampling rate of 96K, audio conversion 24-bit, internal processing 32-bit, and a super wide frequency response of 2 Hz all the way up to 45K. So before we start taking measurements, we need to register our hardware so we can download the software. Register your serial number here, or you could also download the IK Product Manager, and then you can actually just register directly within here as well, and then download and install the Arc X software. All right, let's get this hooked up. Need our power supply right in here. Then the USB cable. Now, you don't have to use the USB cable all the time, just when you're setting it up or transferring profiles from Arc X software. Then for the input, I'm going to use XLR to TRS cables because these will plug into my audio interface. All right, there we go. And then take those into the output of our audio interface. Okay, so output of your audio interface to the input of the Arc Studio. Kind of makes sense, right? All right, there we go. Next up, connect cables to the output here, and these will be run into our studio monitors. So in here, and then I'll plug them into the big 8-inch monitors. Next, connect the Arc microphone to an XLR cable and plug the other end into your audio interface. All right, so we've got it all hooked up and plugged in. Last step, plug it into our computer, but because I don't have a free USB-A port, we're gonna switch out that USB cable with a USB-C to USB-C cable, and we'll plug it in right there. Next, we'll open up Arc X. All right. We have this in standalone right now. You also have a plug-in option right there. We'll just leave it on the stereo setting. Come over here and choose our audio device. I'm using an Audient audio interface, so I'll choose the ASIO driver. Then select device. We want the Arc Studio left. We can also test this here, make sure it's correct. That is left. And for the right, we will select the Arc Studio there, test that. Okay, so once we select our device here, now we can come over here to Calibrate. So let's go ahead and do this. Welcome to Arc X Calibration. It will guide us through the entire thing. Start measurement. So we'll have to go through all of this here. For optimal calibration and setup, ensure the volume knobs on your speakers are set to 0 dB. We'll go to continue here, routing check. So we'll begin that check. That is correct. That is also correct. Okay, now we will continue. Then we have to choose the microphone that we're using. So because we have the latest model of Arc X and of the Arc Studio, this is the mic that we want to choose. And now we need to set up our measurement microphone. We already have it plugged in, remember? So audio device fine, sample rate fine, and this is going to be on channel 3. So we already have our microphone connected, but now we have to turn on the 48 volt phantom power. Okay. And then we're going to adjust the input gain as the test plays and get it within that correct range. So this microphone is going to be sort of in my listening position. I'm not putting it right up next to my speakers. I'm just going to kind of hold it, you know, where I normally would sit. So I will play the test here. Okay, that's it. Then we'll hit continue. Here we can customize our calibration settings. So default is the studio monitor mix, but I may do a project studio, but because I do have my monitors a bit further back, sort of like the space you'd have for a desk, a mixing desk, I might go for the studio monitor mix, and then we can choose the accuracy. Fewer, of course, is going to be much faster, but less accurate. Estimated time about 1 minute. Okay. Advanced, estimated time about 18 minutes. Okay. So you're going to be measuring more points. I think for this, let's just go for something like basic or maybe standard, and we'll just measure in these different points. We'll go with standard, I guess. 7 points, 6 minutes. We'll cut it down so it's faster for the video, right? So fast mode disabled or enabled, up to you. We'll go with disabled. Click this here, hover over it. It will tell you what it does. Countdown, 1 second. Let's make it probably 3 seconds here for our countdown. We could always increase that even further, maybe 5 seconds, 6 seconds, whatever you want. Okay, so we're pretty good there, I think. And now we will continue. Next, you'll probably want to put the Arc measurement microphone on a stand, so that way you can set it up and leave the room. Also, please ensure complete silence until the measurement is complete. So let's get on it. So we have the mic in the stand, phantom power is turned on, and gain is adjusted from that previous step. Now this microphone, the newer microphones, will actually be placed horizontally, whereas the older microphones were placed vertically or up and down, in other words, pointing towards the ceiling. Okay, so again, the newer microphones that come with Arc X are positioned horizontally, or in other words, pointing towards the speakers. Okay, just like this. Then we'll do point 1. It's going to give us 5 seconds to get out of the room. Be completely silent during this time. All right, now we'll move on to point 2 and move the mic over to point 2. Start point 2. Again, 5 seconds, get out of the room, be very, very quiet. Awesome, done with that one. So next I'll speak through the rest of them. And finally, point 7. Awesome, that's it. And we are done, so we can turn off phantom power here and disconnect this mic. Of course, if you have more points, just keep going along as we were doing. Continue here, process complete, awesome. So we can go to the edit window to review and customize the profile. We can see what happened here. So this is what the monitors, how they were actually responding before. And now we can see the correction. So much flatter. You'll also notice that whenever I click on the left speaker versus the right speaker, the overall performance is different. And that makes sense because I have one speaker more freestanding and the other one is more in a corner. So it makes more sense that there would be buildup, let's say on that left speaker versus the right speaker, which you can You can see that, and it's correcting those. Now you're actually mixing in a much more balanced and accurate room. And this profile is already loaded on our Arc Studio, so we can actually bypass just by pressing the button on the front. You can also adjust these points if you want a custom profile. So tuning there, and target, there's custom, default, flat. You can go through all of these different types for whatever you prefer for the type of room that you want. We'll leave it on the default there. Over here is where you can test different types of speakers and see the result that gives you. But we'll just stick with default for now. The correction can be changed to sharp, broad correction. And then we can also change the phase from natural to linear if you want. If you want to change the range that ArcX is correcting for, we can actually click in here per speaker or just for both speakers. So let's say I want to leave everything below 100 Hertz alone. I can do that, and that will update right there. So, if there's certain things on the top end of your speakers that you want to come through, you can change that here. Or of course, same thing for the low end, but we'll put that back on 35. Over here, we'll show you the current speaker, in this case that we're using, which is the Arc Studio. If you want to use the remote, by the way, you can always click here. You could even have that minimize, have this on a different monitor or something, and then quickly switch through different speaker models, which you'll actually see them right there. So you can see what's changing. And if you want to change it here on the remote, you can right click and go to voices and choose, whatever monitors that you want to put on each of these 4 buttons. Of course, we can always just head over to the voicing here and go through the different monitors like that as well. Okay, but you do have that option to use that little remote. It might be a little faster if you know what you want. All right, so let's check this thing out. Of course, before we do that, we should probably save this. So current session, it just gives it a name. We'll call this Truth Studio. So that way we know what monitors it's for. Of course, you can always do the same thing if you have multiple monitors in your setup and you want to, switch them around. You can always save that, load them in whenever you want. So we'll just save this here, save that, make sure we can always recall it whenever we want. We can always go to open session, and right there it is, and load that up anytime we want. So just because of the nature of sound, I can't really show you what it's going to sound like, but I will attempt to by using the Zoom H6 and the Stereo XY microphone. Again, this isn't going to be a scientific test. It's not going to show you exactly what it's going to sound like, but you will at least get an idea of what it sounds like before correction and after correction as I bypass the Arc Studio. And you'll also be able to get an idea of what it sounds like whenever we run it through different type of studio monitor models. All right, so here we are in the DAW. Let's check out some samples. Again, keep in mind, this is not going to be a completely accurate result because of course the audio is going to be going out of your speakers, going through YouTube, and that's going to change the overall sound. But again, at least it will give you some sort of an idea of what it does. Now, again, you don't have to use the Arc Studio. You could just get the ArcX software. And in that case, you would put that as the last insert in your main output, do all your mixing and mastering. And then of course, remember to bypass it before you bounce everything out. So that's the cool thing about the Arc Studio is you don't have to have any software open if you don't want to. And you don't have to remember to bypass things because, nothing's going to be affecting your audio. It's just running through this and through your, through your monitors. All right. So in this case, for this video, I will have this software open really so you can see it whenever I push this button and bypass it. So you can be aware of the difference or know exactly what you're hearing, whether it's being processed or not processed. Okay. So we'll check out processed versus not processed, and also check out some of the different speakers that we can listen to or mix through some of the virtual speakers. All right. We'll start off with the correction turned on. Then bypass it. So you can really hear the difference in that. Hopefully you can hear it being recorded through the Zoom, which I have behind me. We can definitely hear once we bypass that correction, there is a huge buildup especially on that left speaker, in this 100 to 200 hertz range, and also down here in around 75 hertz or so. You can definitely hear the difference in that once it's corrected for. Same for the right, it's correcting for this top end and for some of this lower mid mud that we're getting, just because of standing waves, bass buildup and stuff from it being in a corner, So you can definitely hear that difference. Again, correction is on. And it's not that the uncorrected sounds bad, it's just not accurate. You know what I mean? That's what we're going for here whenever you're mixing, is accuracy. Let's check it on a few other different types of music here. We can also, by the way, go through different types of targets. So we have it on the default now, but we can go through flat, warm tilt, bright tilt, etc. So let's do that maybe. We'll go through some of these here and mess around with some of these other settings. You see for that control room, it has a bit, if you see that tuning line right there, this raises that low end up a bit. Lively room, you can see what these things do here. Control room. Yeah, it's just cleaning things up, making it flatter, making it sound more accurate. So let's try some of these virtual speakers that we can listen through here. And you can see that line, by the way, whenever you select something, it will change what the post is going to be there. You can see this is the 49-inch television here.
RGB chair, throws out hearts like she just don't care. Her KD ray, she
And that P mastering and the high-end three-way, man, those really sound good. I also like having that 49-inch TV and the smartphone in there, portable Bluetooth speaker. You even have some of the IK Multimedia monitors in here as well. High-end monitors, low-end monitors. So again, you can really choose a bunch of different overall sounds through just your standard monitors, which is, just pretty cool. So that is Arc Studio from IK Multimedia. Again, if you don't want to get the full studio, you can always just get the software, use that as a plugin. But the cool thing about the studio is being that the studio comes with the software. You can use the hardware, on a certain pair of monitors, and then switch over to the software, to the plugin, maybe for another pair of monitors or something. So you really do have the ultimate flexibility by getting the studio. But again, nothing wrong with just getting the software version if that's what you prefer. Make your room sound better, make your mixes sound better, make the speakers sound better, just like make everything sound better. But even more than just sounding better is we want to sound accurate. And that's the whole point of Arc Studio and Arc X. Of course, if you want to check it out for yourself, I will have links in the description below. Once again, that is IK Multimedia's Arc Studio.